Waihastguquast isquist pitqulauch kentel spachaman. Good afternoon, my relatives. My traditional name is Pitqulauch. My given name is Timothy. My relatives know me as Spike from Spachman. I'm here to share a little bit of what I know with some of the culture, the drum making, and a few other tidbits of knowledge that was shared with me. Always willing to share it with the relatives, as in the teaching of our ancestors we hand it down. So today we're going to learn a little bit about drum making and the process of that. I have a couple of drums here made out of cedar, two different shades of cedar, rough cut. We still need to sand them a little bit, but to all the youth out there, you certainly need to understand a little bit about mathematics, and who says you don't need math outside of school. Here's one example of it. These individual pieces that sit in here are called staves, and I have 16 for a 15-inch drum, 15-inch drum. So the way that you would calculate this, well, I've used 1x6 rough cut cedar, and to my right here I've got some up against the wall. 1x6, I've cut them at about 2 3/8, and depending on the thickness or the depth of the drum will give you a deeper sound. This one here is about 2 3/8 inches in depth. Very simple drum. So each one of these are called staves. I have 16 of them, and I have two cuts, two different angles here. So 360 degrees is the circle, the circumference of the drum, divided by 2 would give me the degree of the cut. So 16 staves is 32. 360 divided by 32 gives me 11.25. I know that's a little bit complex. My angle here is 11.25 degrees, and you can play with that number to get any, try and round it off to that. The other one is a 14-inch drum, 14 inches across, times pi, so you have your pi from the center to the outside, and then divided by the number of staves gives me the outside length of the stave to double check. And as you can tell, it's fairly round, fairly close, both of them. I'm going to have to sand them, but that's part of what the process is, and using math. So very simple, very simple. It's again something that I certainly want to acknowledge some of the drum makers and cultural knowledge keepers in the Nicola Valley who are quite influential in certainly teaching and learning myself, and certainly having my own little man cave to be able to come into a place and be creative, to look at making drums and trial and error. A lot of the times it's certainly the type of blade that you have and how fine it cuts without shredding your wood, and how sharp it is, and certainly paying attention to the gauges on your chop saw. So yeah, it's been an interesting, I'd say I've been doing this for about 15 years. Again, like I said, acknowledging Yankee Amolst, acknowledging Gary Moses, Sonny Oppenheim, Karen Kootley, just a handful of people that I've learned from as well, and participating in and looking at and watching. One of the things that we know is we watch and learn, right? We learn by observing and certainly practicing on our own, and that's certainly a cultural, you do something until you get better at it. And whereas the mainstream education is certainly tests you on your memory, but your hands-on ability to be creative and work on things to become better. So that's certainly something I've been working on. And I do have a 3-point deer hide here that we got last year and scraped it. That, depending again on the freshness of the hide, a lot of the times if you have the time, you'd want to try and scrape the hide right away. This isn't just one way. There are a few other ways of or methods on how people do this. Some people use lye, I think is what it's called, lye. It's a chemical you put in there, or some people use the wood ash, which is potassium, to put into their hide to scrape it. But if the hide is fresh, put it in the water, 2-3 days. You're able to scrape it all off, scrape the hair off, scrape the membrane off, and turn it over and take the flesh off on one side. So over the years, I remember the first deer hide taking me at least 6 hours. I got it down to where I could probably do it maybe an hour, hour and a half, depending on the hide. So again, it's experience, being able to put a lot of hard physical labor into this, but certainly the experience of learning, learning from your mistakes to do this. And so 15 plus years of doing this and watching and learning from my mentors to where I'm at today. So yeah, that's one of the things we'll do today. And I need to take the hide, get it ready. We'll come back to this. So we're going to do a process of gluing all our staves together. I've lined them up. There's 16 here. Like I said before, it's rough cut, so half of it's rough and the other half is plain. So the inside of this, the outside is smooth and planed. The inside is rough, so I went half and half. And we're using modern technology today, masking tape and glue and some straps. So that's what we'll be working on here to look at this. So you want to try and make sure that they're all lined up properly and close. The joints are sometimes, like if you're not using a sharp or a proper blade for your saw, it'll cut rough through here. So you want a good blade on your skill saw or your chop saw, however you're cutting it. And it's certainly time-consuming work, but well worth it in the end. So as I said, I'm just going to use masking tape, and that's what's going to hold it together while we're in the process of putting glue on it. So I usually do a couple, probably about 1.5 inches masking tape. Put it on there. Make sure that it's on there nice and firm, and it's not going to come off in any way. You want it stuck, and then you turn it over, and you're ready for glue. Good old Gorilla Glue. And try a couple of pieces. I know sometimes glue will dry overnight. I was working on some here, so open up your end of your glue gun or tube and start. So each little strip will get a chunk of glue in it, little crack. Try not to put too much glue in there. You don't want too much glue on your, once you close it together. Otherwise you'll get glue all over and it's kind of unsightly. And you'll have to sand it away if you don't. And again, you want to try and be ready when you do this. I always put get a chunk of masking tape ready. A ratchet strap. Sometimes people use the other ratchet straps with the hooks. This is specially made for using for woodwork. You buy it at a place like Lee Valley Tools or any woodworking store. Probably made about 500 or 600 drum frames with these ratchet straps. And the idea is to try and bring it together and get it ready. So I'll do that. Bring your drum frame together. Bring them back together to the middle here. Take any excess from there, put it on the inside. Simple. Very simple. And then put it together there. A little bit of masking tape. Alright. Make sure it's stuck on there. Good old shop towels. Put a shop towel in there. And the ratchet strap in. I always try and put this right in the middle, and make sure your ratchet strap is in the middle before you tighten it. Right in the middle of the frame. Bring it up all the way around the edges here. You don't want it too tight, all your glue will come out. Make sure your staves are lined up and that your strap is in the middle of the drum frame. Tighten it a little bit. Now just going to take a napkin again and paper towel, clean the excess glue off, because the glue is just harder to sand off if you don't. My glue's been sitting all winter, so it's a little bit tougher to come out of the bottle. And then, in order to dry it, just usually turn it over, set it on a couple of little boards like this so the air gets to it all the way around, and yeah, let it dry. Let it dry overnight, maybe 12 hours it'll dry, and you're able to take it off. So there we go, gluing our drum frame together. Okay. Here we have, I just have a 3-point buck hide. I think it was one of my nephews shot it. I haven't completely finished fleshing it, as you can see a little bit, but we're going to use this little area here and sort of spread it out a little bit. But again, you want to flesh both sides, right? Try and clean it up as much as you can. Always ensure that your surface is clean as well. I'm using just poly, and it's easier to clean, and you know, the table has been well used as well. But I'm just going to spread it out. There's a little bit of hair on it. The hair will come off once it dries, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. What I'm going to do is just measure it out, and then after I measure it, I'm going to cut the string. People have their own styles, their own ways in how they do this. There is no right and wrong way, and I think that in your own preference sometimes. If I have a big hide and it's nice and it's clean and it's got no holes and I want to utilize it as much as I can, I'll actually start cutting on the outside to cut the lace all the way on the outside, maybe go around 2 or 3 times, and then I'll stick my drum on there, and in certain areas where I can, like look here, there's a hole here, I can't put a drum frame over that. So you got to try and measure. I guess that's the beauty of this. When you do this work, different size drum frames would fit different areas of the hide. So this could be a little kid's drum right here, right? And then the bigger drum. So it takes a little bit of pre-planning to know how big your hide is, how many drum frames and the different sizes to do that. So, but just for today, I'm going to use this and mark it. So, okay. When you're scraping the hide, you'll have a lot of water in it, and as you're scraping, you're gonna scrape the water, blood, whatever, any other moisture that may be in it. So when you're going to make the drum, you want to try and spread it out. I usually use a straight edge of some kind. I've got a little spatula somewhere, I don't remember where it is, but I'm going to try and move it. Work from the center to the outside as much as you can to try and either move moisture or just flatten it out a little bit more before you start cutting. Okay, so yeah, just spread it out a little bit. Put your drum frame down and measure. Sometimes people will want the hide to come right over. Sometimes you may not have enough. You'll go right to the edge. One of my little inventions I had is it's a tool to use for measuring distance. I sharpen one edge and it's just gonna be the outside, and I'm gonna mark it all the way around, follow it. And you know, if you're a little bit off, that's fine. Don't be hard on yourself. I mean, this takes time. This takes practice. So as you can see, this little gauge is marking my hide as I go around. It's my extra that I want. And then I'm going to start cutting. So I moved it. So when you do it, try and utilize your much hide as you can, because there's so much work that goes into scraping a hide, and you learn that. You're going to utilize every aspect of that hide as possible to make as many drums or utilize the hide. You don't want to waste too much, and you know how much work it's going to be. So just for this today in this demonstration, I did move it to the edge, but next time I'll show you that because it is a lot of work, you want to be mindful of that. Nice, good, sharp pair of scissors is always important. Sharp tools, like anything, is always important. If you don't have sharp tools, then it just makes the work harder. As our elders have always said, work smarter, not harder. So yeah, just finish following my, as I always call it, my little imaginary line. I can still see my line. Some people just cut around, and that's fine. You can do it that way as well. However way you want to do it, it's up to you. And you'll find that I think if you plan it a little bit more, you'll know that, you'll see that in the quality of your work, and people will see that, and they'll look at it. You know, people look when you bring out a new drum or something, they look at the quality, they look at the sound. So there we go, we've cut it out. I may have a little bit extra here, but trim that off. But like I said before, it's something that you want to be mindful to use every part of this hide as you can. Sometimes if there's leftover hide, I always try and make little rattles. Take this out of the way for now. And just maybe fold it in half and fold it into a quarter. Get it out of the way. What I'm going to do here is cut some lace now. And again, you look at the outside of this hide, it's a little rough, you'll have to trim it. And cut as minimal as possible off that edge. You don't want to be wasteful of too much because you know how much work and you put into that hide when you were cutting or scraping it. Therefore, you're going to be mindful of how much you're going to take off. See, that's just minimal. And that way my outside of my lace looks good. I mentioned this isn't a finished hide. I've still got a little bit more to do, but just for today I'm going to utilize it. And I use the neck as well. The neck is the thickest part of the hide. Save that for your centerpiece of your hide, so, or your drum, I mean, sorry. Thank goodness for good sharp scissors. Always try and keep your hide as flat as you can so that way you're able to, as you're cutting along, you're not moving it all the time. And again, that's something that takes experience, takes a little bit of learning about how to do that. That's just my preference and how I do that. Okay, so I'm going to start here as my starting point right around here. And depending on the thickness of the hide, sometimes you'll get a summer hide with deer, and if you want to make a drum, sometimes the people will use those for rattles. A lot of the times the hunters will get deer in the fall time. The hide is a little thicker and a little bit more easier to work with. You're not cutting holes with the summer hide. It's so thin. You got to be mindful when you scrape the hide that you don't want your blades too sharp on your draw knife. So this part is around the stomach, underneath the stomach, so it's thin. So when you go to stretch and tie it, this will stretch, or when you go to tie it, it'll stretch and it'll become weak. So you try and leave it a little thicker and then just sort of trim around it. And usually for a 14-inch drum, I'll try and go maybe, I'm 5'11", so probably 16 feet, give or take. So make sure that you get all of this, because it's unsightly. This little around the edge here, there's some dirt. You know, if you try and keep your hide on a tarp and keep it off the ground as much as you can. There's my little bit of trim that I had, you know, with the outside lace. And you want to work around some holes like there. I'm going to cut right to the hole. So, and the hide being a little bit thinner, I'm going to cut the lace a little thicker. There's a trick to this one. Whenever you come into a corner like this, come right up as far as you can and then stop, because it's like turning a corner and you're utilizing that area without wasting it, especially after. So I'm going to come right up into the corner and then turn. I'm still quite thin here, so I'm going to go a little thicker. As I'm working towards the neck and around the shoulder, the hide tends to be a little bit thicker, so your lace will get thinner as you work towards the neck. So I'm still a little bit thin there. I'll just trim a little bit of fat here that I missed. So I'm thicker, so I'm going to go thinner with my lace. Try and the other thing, I'm going to make a circle in the middle here, so I'm going to cut an extra. Probably we'll come back to this piece. You'll see why I'm going to use it and how I'm going to use it. But that'll be split down the middle right here, and that'll be the inner part of your drum frame. Okay. And again, it's important that you use good scissors, especially if you get around the neck. a moose hide. Moose hide tends to be really, it's a beautiful hide once you get it fixed properly, but it's hard to cut with cheap pair of scissors. You want to be able to spend some money on a good pair of scissors, just like a seamstress, just like any other, like a carpenter. You know, they spend good money on tools, and especially if you're going to be using them for a while. Don't be afraid to spend a few bucks on a good pair of scissors. I bought a pair of nice, you know, leather scissors for moose hide. You know, $70 for a nice pair of scissors. Well worth it. You know, 5 years old, probably cut about at least, you know, maybe half a dozen moose hides, and very easy with thick hide. So something like that, it's always good to have in your arsenal. I'm still thick around the neck and along the shoulders on this side, so my lace is a little thin. Don't be afraid of, you know, you always put good energy into your work. Always take pride in, like our ancestors always took pride in their work and took the time and the patience to do it. You know, don't ever feel rushed to do this. It takes time, and if you're willing to learn, then make that time, because you'll never regret it. Our elders say that drumming has always been one of our highest forms of prayer, and if you want to talk to the Creator and the ancestors in a good way, then you certainly want some good tools like a good drum to sing. You know, a lot of the times our people use their drums, and today we use a lot of use these tools for funerals and gatherings and stuff. When I mentioned that one of our highest forms of prayer, our elders talk about, and our knowledge keepers talk about, the songs will help you cry, the songs will lift your spirit, the songs will help you in whatever you need with your help. So it's important to be mindful when you're making these things and looking at them, playing them, singing. And again, if you're not sure, you know, just for argument's sake, I'm just measuring. See, I got 1 arm length already, 1 arm length. I got 2 arm lengths here. So I think by the time I hit the other end, it'll be 3 arm lengths. So that'll be more than enough for my lace for the drum. So you're going to look at you know, spots like this where you take a corner, trim it a little bit. And again, that's something that takes a little bit of experience, a little bit of time. You know what you're looking for when you're cutting the lace. You know, sometimes it gets wide, you'll have a point in here. You got to remember, when this dries, it becomes hard and stiff, and you know, sometimes if you have a little jagged edge, it'll be very sharp. So be mindful of that when you're making your lace. And be mindful that, again, like you start to stretch it, that hide will, or having a thin hide, it'll break. So you want to go a little bit wider. And I'm just trimming it. So okay, we're gonna cut the middle. Again, this was part of the neck, so this will be the middle of our drum. So you're gonna try and measure about maybe 1 inch down, 1.5 inches. Go right down the middle with this, and it's going to be your centerpiece. So again, it's the use of sharp tools. Sometimes you gotta resort to, but it's going to be my centerpiece for my drum, so I'm going to. right to the middle, about to here, and you want to kind of round it off a little bit so it's a little bit more sightly there. Round this piece off a little, trim it. You can see that's kind of rounded off. And that's the middle of my drum. Stretch it a little bit. Okay, so there's the middle of my drum. I'll come back to that piece, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to punch holes. I did spread it out a little bit, and again, if it's not, don't worry about this part, as long as you're able to hit to the outside as much as you can. But what I'm going to do here is just fold it back and show you we're going to punch holes. So I'll come back. I use the trusty old chisel, nice and sharp, and I measure, you know, one finger. However you want to do that, that's fine. One finger, push through. Then I go maybe another half just to make sure when my lace is going through that I have enough room. Then I measure 3 fingers to that outside. And again, you're looking 3 fingers to the other side, sort of 1 finger. You know, take your time. There's no rush to do this. Again, it's about being mindful of the quality of your work, the energy you put into it, you know, and that's important. 1.5. Another 3 finger, 1.5, and go all the way around. You'll see how that works. It's almost like a pizza dough, but it takes time. There are different styles to doing this as well. The different methods or different ways to tie it. This is one of probably, you know, half a dozen, maybe a little more of tying it, but this is one way. Depending on your teacher, depending on your preference, you know, we all have our own way, our own style. Doesn't mean that it's wrong in any way. Done in a good way. You know, some people tend to use a hammer. Nothing wrong with using a hammer, as long as you're careful. Right? You got a sharp instrument in your hand, scissors, chisel. Be mindful of safety. Safety is always first and foremost, especially working with sharp tools. So you look at, I got 3 fingers and 3 fingers, so give or take, I usually try to just go in the middle, sort of guesstimate, right? Or, you know, however you want to do it, chisel. Don't hit it too hard. I mean, the hide is fairly thin. Got a sharp chisel, you're able to go through. So, and again, once you're done, and this is something that was shown to me, and strictly for the purpose of working smarter, not harder, is spreading it out on a separate board. That way you can turn the board every time you're working with it. Okay, so just something that I've learned. And again, sometimes when you sand this, try and make sure that this edge is, there's nothing on this edge. I've made a mistake a few times and had a tidbits that, you know, cut off my lace, get stuck in between there and the hide, and then after it dried and looked at it, there was a little bump. You know, so always make sure that before you do this, clean it off, you know, make sure, but also look for a flat edge, the flattest side, turn it over. And that's something you'll look at when you're sanding the frame and whatever. So for this purpose, we're just going to use this as the middle. I've got my lace here, and again, you want to look at either side of your lace. Sometimes people start at the neck, which is the thick part. I've left one side deliberately thick just to start off, or the other side. You know, it's up to you. Judge whatever side you want to use. This one seems to be the thicker hide. I left it a little thicker on that side, and that's where you'll punch your hole in. Punch a little hole. And I usually do two. Like so, oh, you got a big hole, right? And then you're gonna loop it through your middle. And then once you're doing that, you want to try and keep your one end narrow so it's able to go through all the hide. Trim it a little bit, put a narrow point on it, right, so it's nice and narrow, because you'll find that out. And you'll find, like even with this, I'm feeling a little bit of the fat on my fingers, because I didn't finish fully scraping it. It'll probably get on the drum, and it's okay for today, just for this demonstration. But be mindful you're taking off all the flesh, all the hair, all the fat. Just a scoop in there. Pull it all the way through. Make the center loop. And again, it's your own preference. You're going to loop it through these holes. I'm going to start doing that. Always go through the top here. Pay attention. I know some people too busy talking with their buddy and visiting, and they're not paying attention to what they do, and sometimes your lace gets twisted, or you know, it comes with experience. Make sure that you're paying attention. See, got a little chunk here. Oh no, I guess that's something else. I thought that was. And I'm going to go underneath. You can do it all the way through, under, come back, go underneath. You don't want them twisted, so pull it through. Make sure you keep your drum in the middle as much as you can. With the hide, don't tighten it either. Just keep it fairly loose, because you'll tighten it once you get all the lace on. Otherwise, your drum frame will go to one side. You'll have all hide come over the top, and you'll have nothing on this side. So you want to try and keep it fairly loose. Okay, so you can see that finished lacing it. Try and keep your centerpiece right in the middle as well. I didn't tighten them up. I left it as loose as I can. And I'm going to go back to where I started from, which is right here. I just looped it on. And again, the beauty of using the board to twist. And just tighten it a little bit. Don't get, because you're going to do it 2 or 3 times. You're going to do it 2 or 3 times, and you'll find that you want to try and keep the middle hide in the circle here in the middle. That's important. Just enough to tighten it, pull all the slack up, and you'll put the finishing touches on it, so it will take a little time, a little practice. Going around and around, usually maybe 3 times. You'll find you'll probably come up with an extra 2 feet or sometimes 3 feet, depending on the size of your drum. to this again, right to there. And before I get too much further, my loop that I started, and this is a trick that my old buddy Gary Moses showed me. You want to go through, and before you tighten it, go through the loop that you had, because that's where it'll keep the lace snug once you get it tightened, right to there. Okay, and we'll go around another time. Pull a little tighter. Pull a little tighter. That hide will start to stretch a little more as you're going. And this is just manicure stuff. Pull a little tighter. Your circle is, you'll see it'll start to form a little bit more as you tighten it. You start to see right here, I didn't cut it as thick enough, so I may be in trouble here a little bit. I didn't cut it thick. Now that it starts to stretch, it may become flimsy, and that's important. You know, if you want to make a good drum for somebody, don't be afraid to put in the blood, sweat, and tears into scraping a hide, and you know, if they're gifts to family or whatever, you know, you realize how much work it is, but you know, to be gifted a drum is certainly a great honor, and to do that. And you want to do it right. You don't want somebody coming back and saying, well, geez, my drum, you know, one of the lacing broke. But just for demonstration purposes today, we'll leave it at that. Sometimes you can, like I've done, I've fixed it. I've actually taken lace and tied it off on one side, twirled it around, and then tied it off on the other side, just to strengthen it. And you can do that. I mean, it's a little unsightly, but it can be done. Sometimes people don't even notice. You do stuff like that, you're the only one that'll notice. And again, keeping that in the middle, that is so important to keep, you know. Again, I'm going to go one more tighter a little bit here. Go around, and here's where I'm going to start my manicure, and at my end of this was the top. Twirl it around as much as you can, pull it in, pulling a little tighter. Don't pull too tight. You want maybe finger tight. You don't want to pull it too tight, your drum will sound like a coffee can. So you got to allow for shrinkage. The hide will, once it dries, all the moisture will be gone. There will be a little bit of shrinkage. And yeah, you want it to sound good. Sound is one of the things you'll notice once you learn how to do this. So and then again, one of the things you want to look at is probably a displacement of about an inch. Put your finger in there, and if it's displaced about that inch, give or take, that's fairly close. Again, if you stretch it too tight, you'll have that tinny sound of a coffee can, and you don't really want that. And you noticed I maybe pulled a little bit too tight. I'm narrow here and wider here, so I'm going to have to compensate pulling tighter over here as I go on. So I'm going to just sort of work on tightening it up a little bit more. I don't want to go too much. Not so much here, just to snug it up, but I'm going to pull tighter over here. So there we go. We've got, I've got more than an arm length at least, an arm length and a half. So when you look at your lacing, it probably could be even two for this size drum, maybe 2 arm lengths. So I'm going to leave it at that. Let's look at the displacement again. It's a little tighter, which is okay. This is not a thick hide. It'll have a higher pitch sound. So all I'm going to do is make a simple X. You want to go straight across. Go straight across, split that circle in half. And go straight across, make a simple X or a T handle. Try and keep it as tight as you can because you've come through here. You want to do that. And all that is just twirl it around a couple times. Alright, okay. And then I'm going to go left. I'm going to go left over here. Same thing. And again, you don't want to pull too tight. Come down through here. And you can, as you see, I'm pull it over a little bit, but you're going to be able to pull it back, so I wouldn't be able to go, you don't want your handle too loose. Twirl it around a couple more times. And then come across. So I'm going to come right through here. Okay. It's a little off. I missed it a bit, but you got the idea, and you're going to learn this through trial and error. You're going to learn through what it is to put some workmanship into your drum. And I want to go through there. I'll go through here, around, and pull it down a little bit. Try and even it out a bit. So here's one of the things I was talking about to be mindful of when you trim your drum, to make sure that, because it'll dry, it may get into somewhere. And with this, I'm just going to cut a little extra to tie it off. Maybe cut off about a foot extra, whatever. And then just do a couple of half hitches, right? We're all from Spachman horse people. We should know what a half hitch is. And then sometimes, you know, just for manicure's sake, you want to hide it away a little bit. Cut it off, fold it underneath. There you go. Voila. And it depends, again, like some people are quite meticulous. A lot of times with a handle like this, we'll just put a hanky or something, because this may be rough hanky or a chunk of cloth on there, and people just hang on to it. And all I'm going to do is just, you'll see all of this. I want to smoothen it out. Take a few minutes to do that. Even put it over the edge of your frame. Pull it out. Take some time. Smoothen it out, because it'll dry like that. It'll dry over top of your drum. Kind of a sightly appearance. Takes a little bit of time. Cedar's a nice light wood to use. I know other people don't have cedar. Use what you have. I'm fortunate enough and I'm able to pick cedar up in Vancouver. I go to Vancouver often enough to be able to do that and barter and trade. And again, you'll learn, right? I mean, ideally this is where I wanted it, but I had a little extra there when I measured it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's preferably your own style. Nobody's really going to look at that. They want to just listen to you sing. So there we go. We have a demonstration of a 14-inch drum made out of a 3-point deer hide. What? When we dried it, I've just used big chunk of wire or whatever. I don't even know where I got it from, but I think it was a hockey game thing, and just bent it, an old one that I found. But you want to look for a wide spot, like preferably here, or you see, and you want to hook it onto the frame. You don't want it hooking out, sticking out so it'll dry out here. I've learned that as well. I wasn't paying attention. You want to hook it right onto just the frame itself, and try and have it so it's not touching anything. Try and put it right in the middle and balance it. Do that before you hang it up, and that way it'll dry. I mean, it's not touching anything, so, and it looks like a thing of beauty. So hang it up, and it usually takes anywhere between 2 to 4 days, depending on, summertime when it's 30 degrees out. A drum like this will probably dry in a day and a half. Springtime, there's still a lot of moisture in the air. This will probably take up to about 4 days to dry. So, be patient, check on them. Sometimes if you have a lot of water, the moisture will come down, gravity will pull the water down. Take and move it to the other side, right? Take and shift it so your water's up here, and so you're not having it sag or whatever. It's important to check on it, maybe every 12 hours or whatever, right? Maybe you're just so proud of you just can't stop admiring your work, and that's okay. That's part of who we are. We always took pride in what we do, right? So one of the ideas when you finish, like after your drum cures and you want to paint it, and whatever it is, whatever you want. Nobody says you have to put something specific on there. But while I was teaching, I always talked about the Chaptikul, the legends and stories of our people. And there's always one that my dad shared about buffalo and why there's no buffalo in the Nicola Valley or British Columbia and Sinclair. And so painted them on a lot of the drums we made. And when it came to storytelling, we would pick one drum, and again teaching the youth to share those stories. Once they learned them enough, or were told those stories enough, that's how they were handed down. As you hear a story enough times, that you were able to tell it yourself. So as an idea, that's one of the things, Sinclair has always been our teacher, teaches us how to be and how not to be. And so honoring him by putting it on a drum, so when you're sitting around in a circle, maybe one of the youth might know the story, get them to share that. Or when you first start teaching, use it as an example. So, you have a favorite story, maybe put it on your drum, or a favorite character. So that's one of many ideas that I've used anyway, of just painting it. And certainly I'm not an artist. I've had to trade, so trade and barter with your family and friends, that whoever can paint, don't be afraid to ask them. Sometimes because I'm not an artist, I'll stencil something onto there, but that's just me, that's my own preference. But I've got some dear friends that are good artists, and they wanted a drum or a rattle, or they wanted some smudge or whatever, and I needed the drum painted, and that was sort of the trading and the bartering that I did. And again, we're looking at just the drum handles. We showed you that one. This is a different one. You'll see a different style, right? And this is one of the ceremonial drums we use for our manhood training, our womanhood training, when we're out on the land doing stuff. Just a deeper thickness of the drum gives you a deeper sound, a bigger drum. Certainly honoring my wife's culture from the coast. They love their big drums as well. And deep sound when they sing. So yeah, sort of the same handle as well. So with the drumstick, red willow. Red willow's always been one of our medicines. A little bit of foam. I've actually took the time to put a crystal shard in here. A crystal shard wrapped, taped, and then some buckskin on it. So, you know, just adding more power, more medicine. So when you sing for the people, when you drum for the people, it's always been our medicine and always been one of our highest forms of prayer. So, you know, one of the things is just, I do just for my own preference and share what I know and what I do. So thank you. It's been an honor to do this, and I hope people learn something and don't be afraid to ask the questions that you need about this. I mean, I'm not saying I'm the resident expert. I've still, you know, you're never too old to learn. I'm still learning. But this is some of the things that I've picked up from some of my mentors and my teachers over the years, and carried it forward to hand down to the future generations. So, wai put.